With new heroes regularly being rotated into Battlegrounds, I have to wonder what we're gonna see in the future, and you guys came up with some pretty crazy ideas in this video that I'd frankly love to see added to Battlegrounds.
Hey buddy, watch this.
That's right, custom heroes like this one, and I'm gonna be frank, I'm gonna do this video a little quicker than normal because I already recorded it once and accidentally had some audio playing in the background, so I don't feel like doing a super long discussion on all these heroes again, so we'll do our best. But this is Murabi from Mega Ray Quaza, and of course Murabi, a character we all remember in competitive standard Hearthstone, didn't get very far, so I'd love to see him brought back, finally get some time to shine. With this hero power, Chill Out, which is 1 gold, and it will freeze a minion in Bob's Tavern. And your first instinct might be, wait, freezing is free, why would I pay a gold for that? Well, this is only going to freeze a single minion instead of the entire board. And what that means is you can find something you really want at the end of a turn, lock it in, but still get the refresh on the rest of the board. So it's kind of like you're spending 1 gold on that refresh for the next turn when all the other minions roll in as new ones. So it's really kind of perfect. You get to keep what you want, that key unit, and you still get to see the choices, maybe try to find that triple or just some other key thing on the following turn. And it puts the freezing aspect of Murabi into play rather nicely. So I think this would offer some cool strategic implications. I like that you get to make really careful decisions with it. And although it wouldn't be good on every turn, sometimes you might waste it if you need 2 or 3 heroes to freeze or 2 or 3 minions to freeze. Nonetheless, there would be those moments where it lines up perfectly and it might feel rather rewarding. Moving on here to Sky Captain Crag from Nat Page. This is a hero power called Charge. And it costs 1 gold and reads, at the start of your next combat, attack first. And if you didn't know about attacking order in Battlegrounds, here's how it works. There are 2 ways it's determined. If you have more minions than your opponent, then you will always attack first because that extra minion is basically attacking. And if you have the same number of minions as your opponent, then it's just random. It's a coin flip who gets to attack first. And that can be really decisive for the outcome of a game. You know, if you have a big cleave minion that gets to go first, boom, job done, like it's awesome. Or maybe you want to have a small divine shield popper going first. That's great. But if you attack second, sometimes things can go really south. But knowing if you're going to attack first actually offers you a lot of strategic implications. So you know that divine shield popper is going to work on their giant nightmare amalgam, or you know that your cave hydra is going to go off successfully. And although this doesn't add like raw stats or value or economy to the board, I think the tactical decision making here is so valuable that this hero power would still be worth it, because you can build out your board, you can build out your game plan knowing that you have the luxury of attacking first. And that, especially as you get into the late game, gives you so many ways to counter your opponent's game plan. Those big taunt nightmare amalgams aren't as scary if you know you can go for a divine shield popper and then a tiny poisonous minion right off the bat. And it will always work and it will never backfire because you have your order set. That's a very powerful asset to have. So I personally think, of course, Charge is perfect for pirates. Sky Captain Crag, great hero choice. This looks hilarious and awesome, and that means this is a really, really good hero. Moving on here to Genzo the Shark from Drop Dead. This is a passive hero power that when you get a triple, you'll get 2 minions from your current tier instead of getting a minion from the higher tier. So currently, if you're at tier 4, you triple up, you get that key tier 5 unit, that Light Fang, that brand. Genzo would change that. You'd get 2 tier 4 units instead. You might get yourself a Cave Hydra and a Security Rover, right? And that has really big strategic implications about how you play out a game. For instance, going to tier 4 to find those key units wouldn't be a good strategy necessarily, because you're not going to find that game-defining Light Fang or brand at 5. So maybe you shift to a more aggressive style and you triple up, early in the game, and you just get 2 extra units, because that's a really efficient play. You get stat efficiency instead of economy or tier or ramp efficiency, and that might help you smork down opponents in the early game, develop a really strong early lead that you leverage into some more aggressive tiering later. That's awesome, because that makes things different. It makes your opponents change how they have to think about the game. And you could also play for really specific units as well. Maybe there's something you love on tier 3. You're looking for that crowd favorite exactly, and this helps you find and define your build via that crowd favorite. So a lot of different ways to take this one into action, but I think ultimately the way it would change the game, make you think about things differently, would be fantastic and a welcome addition to Battlegrounds. Moving on here to Xavius from Rob K with Nightmare Lord, an active 1 gold hero power that adds a Nightmare to your hand. If you forgot Nightmare, that's the Ysera Dream card that gives a unit +5/+5, but it will then die at the start of your turn. So that would mean the start of your tavern turn, because it's the next turn, right? Not the start of the combat phase, presumably, otherwise this would be kind of lame. But if it works like that, if it works where it dies when you go back into the tavern, this is a really, really, really cool hero. Because essentially here what you have is a way to stock up on stats. We have some heroes now like Gallywix to let you stock up on economy, but this would allow you to stock up on stats in a big way. So for instance, the way the game works right now, say you have like a Battlecry build and you're cycling into, I don't know, a Defender of Argus. Sometimes you get stuck with that Defender of Argus because it's the last thing you played, it's your last unit on board. Well, now you could give that Defender of Argus like 5 nightmares that you've stocked up over the course of the game, and suddenly it would be like, you know, a 27, 28 minion that could actually contest and help you win a round. So maybe you save all your nightmares for that last final push. Or maybe you just, you know, give 1 or 2 to that Defender of Argus to help, you know, complement the round. You could do it either way. There are also some implications of killing your own units when you come back into the tavern. Currently, no way to kill off units in the tavern. This would allow you to do that. So maybe you nightmare a Sneed's Old Shredder. You don't really want the Sneeds, but when you come back into the tavern, the Sneeds dies in your tavern. Its death rattle goes off in your tavern, and then maybe it spawns like a Myexna, and you would love to have a Myexna, so it's a perfect fit. Some really neat gameplay implications here. Very strategic, very calculated in how you have to use this. I personally think this would be an awesome hero and a really cool gameplay mechanic. I would love to see this in the game. Next up here is Nat Page from Meepazor and the hero power Fishing that reads, whenever you play a minion, refresh the tavern. And this could be awesome in like a battle cry cycling build. Every time you play that battle cry, you get the free refresh into the next battle cry, and you don't have to spend that gold re-rolling to find your cycling battle cry minions. That's pretty incredible, and maybe even OP. But there's a downside to this hero power, right? Sometimes you don't want to refresh the tavern when you play a minion. Sometimes there might be, you know, 2 Menagerie Magicians on board and you want to buy one and play it because you only have 1 open board spot, but you want to keep the second one as well. And maybe you don't have the gold to buy both. Maybe you wanted to freeze it. So you have to be very careful about how you do this, right? You have to store things in hand potentially instead of playing them. You have to be very careful, you know, maybe saving things for the next round. And in the early game in particular, like if you need to buy 2 units at once, just don't mess things up. Order could be very impactful, but it gets very scary as board spaces get restricted. So high upside, but some risk, some calculation necessary to make sure you don't mess this one up. And ultimately, I think a hero power that would be a lot of fun, and because things would just be flying around like crazy, all kinds of new minions. Scene, and although maybe scary from a power level standpoint, I can think of some problems for this one. Ultimately, still an idea that I'd like to see executed. Moving on here to Shindlezair from Red Stake and the hero power Nether Swap, an active 2 gold hero power that reads, at the start of your next combat, your opponent's left and rightmost minions switch places. So of course, right now in Battlegrounds, the left and rightmost spots are some of the most like strategically important. Maybe you put like a big cleave minion out there first, so it'll attack early and you'll just overwhelm your opponent's stuff, or a small unit to proc a divine shield, for instance. And that makes a big impact on how battles resolve. With this one, you'd swap that. So if your opponent put that tiny little divine shield procer out there, they might accidentally put their big Hoss minion first and mess up their entire build, or maybe their cleave gets pushed to the back and doesn't actually end up doing anything. Some real, you know, impactful changes could happen based on Nether Swap. But here's where this gets really fun. There are some serious mind games with this hero power because your opponent knows they're fighting Shindlezair. They know that Nether Swap exists, so they're going to be like, oh, okay, look, I'm going to switch my units. He's going to swap them. Like, I'm going to put the things I don't want, I'm going to put them in their opposite positions, right? But then there's some mind games, right? Because what if Shindlezair says, well, he's smart enough to know I'm going to hit the button. I'm not going to hit the button. And then the other guy's like, well, wait a minute. He's pretty smart. He knows that I know that he knows that I know that he knows. And suddenly there's like 17 layers a la Princess Bride of like who is going to actually hit the button or do this. And I just absolutely love that. So sometimes you're going to get the effect for free because your opponent's going to do it for you. Sometimes you're going to have to force it. Maybe you alternate. I don't know, that's just awesome, and I love the idea of interacting with your opponents like this. Like, it happens a little bit with Nefarian today, but it's pretty simple. Like, Nefarian's always going to hit the button. There's really not a reason not to hit the button. But with Nether Swap, there are reasons, and I think that would be so cool to see. I'd love more hero powers in this vein. Moving on here to Rafam from Proteins of Love. This is Evil Recruitment, and it's passive, and it reads, Bob's Tavern offers a copy of the first enemy minion that died last combat. So if you kill off your opponent's big Nightmare Amalgam, you're going to get a Nightmare Amalgam in your tavern. Now, I think it's pretty clear this wouldn't be like a 30-30 Divine Shield Amalgam. It would be a copy of the base level of the unit, but that's still pretty good because you are going to face good minions. People run good minions, and that means you're going to get offered good minions. Often a lot of amalgams and cave hydras, those sorts of things that you care about. So this just increases the overall quality of your tavern pretty regularly. But this is another one that's kind of mind gamesy and counterplayish because your opponent could just throw some garbage minion into the beginning of their fight to make sure that you don't get offered anything cool. But then they kind of sacrifice their power level to do that. So it's like, am I going to take the hit? Is another guy going to take the hit? There's all kinds of decisions that happen, particularly in the early game probably, where you have a lot of flexibility for which things are often dying first, that make this a lot of fun. And I love the idea of interacting with your opponents on this tactical level that we don't see as much in Battlegrounds right now. So this card, cool from a Rafam standpoint, very fitting from a thematic standpoint, but also a really, really, really fun gameplay mechanic, I think. Moving on here to Alakir from Rydems. This is pretty simple and elegant hero power, but that's fine. Sometimes we need those. This one just gives a minion Wind Fury, kind of like George gives a minion Divine Shield. This one gives one Wind Fury. And if you're not sure what Wind Fury does in Battlegrounds, we see it in a couple places. Zap, the tier 6 unit, has Wind Fury. That's why he kills 2 things immediately upon attacking. And then we also have Gentle Megasaur, which gives your Murlocs Wind Fury, which can be pretty impactful. If they have like Poisonous and Divine Shield, they can attack 2 things right away, and often they're killing bigger things instead of kind of lingering around and getting killed by tokens or Death Rattle summons, etc. So Wind Fury is rather important, and of course if you can give Wind Fury to like a Cave Hydra, Foe Reaper, Cleave style minion, that's going to be an enormous opportunity. It gets to attack twice right away. It could theoretically wipe out your opponent's board almost by itself if it survives that initial trade. But sometimes Wind Fury doesn't really do much anyway, right? Like the minions often die, especially in the early game. This is not going to do much. They die anyway. They trade defensively just as much as they trade offensively. So often it would just kind of whiff and kind of not do much. Plus you're committing to a unit. So in other words, worse than Divine Shield in many cases, but in a few specific instances better. And that's fine. That's cool. Things like this need to exist. Really simple, basic things that have important implications on the game. That's great, and Alakir is certainly a fitting hero for that. So although not a lot of complexity here, nonetheless, clean, good design. Moving on to Amalgamation from Weird Grim. This is a 0 mana active hero power, 0 gold that is. It's just kind of weird. I like that little twist. And it reads, change a minion tribe to all. So the Nightmare Amalgam style. Then disable your hero power for the rest of the game. So you have this super impactful effect, but you only get to use it once. And you have to be very careful. So you're going to turn something into an amalgam, which is super buffable, of course, in Battlegrounds. You can do all kinds of things with amalgams, create all sorts of synergies with it, and you get to choose what minion it is. So maybe you're like, ooh, I'm going to make a Cobalt Guardian, an amalgam, so I can start buffing it and utilizing that Divine Shield, and that's amazing. And you could really start to build a nice build out of that. But when do you hit it? How long do you wait? What unit is it? Do I have to go now? There's all kinds of decisions that matter because you only get to do it once. And I think that's a really neat idea. Also, you're committed once you do it. So if things pan out differently, you go Cobalt Guardian, you end up with a beast build, maybe you're pretty sad. Like, yes, it's a beast, but it's not exactly synergistic with beasts. And I love the strategic implications of a card like that. So I would love to see this one as well. Another amalgam style thing. Isn't exactly what everybody wants for the game, but I personally think amalgams are fun. They just need to be balanced carefully, and the same would be true for this card. And then finally, we have Vesh, the Plague Lord of Murlocs here from Red Cap. You'll know Vesh if you played the Tombs of Terror adventure for Savers of Doom. And his hero power reads, join the mass. Your minions with no tribe are treated as Murlocs. So I love this idea of like strengthening or bolstering tribal sets in Battlegrounds. I think until perhaps the buff to Lookout and Cold Light Seer. Murlocs definitely needed a little bit of help, and that might have been when Vesh was designed here by Redcap. I'm not sure they need quite as much help today, but nonetheless, fusing multiple tribes together, setting up some other kinds of builds is really cool. Now, I'll admit, there are some power problems in this card. For instance, you can now Toxfin things like a Righteous Protector, and a Toxfin Righteous Protector is sort of insanely powerful here. So we have to be careful. I think maybe Toxfin kind of just needs a nerf, to be honest. It might be a little bit too good. And you might be thinking, wait a minute, Regis, you can give poisonous to Foe Reaper or Cave Hydra. That's too good. Well, you can't. Those have tribes. This is minions with no tribe. It doesn't mean all non-Murlocs are Murlocs, just things that don't already have a tribe. So there's only a handful of really scary ones as far as I can tell. But anyway, I would change this one personally to an active hero power that says something like, 2 gold, the next minion you buy becomes a Murloc, or the next non-tribal minion you buy becomes a Murloc, just to give it some tax, essentially, because it's free right now. It has a lot of flexibility. If you give it an economy tax, or maybe even 3 gold or something, that helps check the power level. It reins it in a little bit, makes you commit a little more before doing crazy things, which could really hurt a Murloc build that might need gold as efficiently as possible in the early to mid game. Efficiently. Get it? So anyway, some design questions here, some power level issues perhaps appearing with Join the Mass. I'm well aware of those, but nonetheless, from a flavor standpoint, 100% home run, and I think these kinds of cards need to exist where we merge tribes together, we have these things that bridge gaps. This is really cool in theory, if not perfect in execution. And there you go, guys. That wraps it up for this custom card review, or custom hero review this time around. And we're not done with Battlegrounds custom designs. Next time, I want you to submit a demon synergy card. So it can be a demon, it could be a non-demon, but it has to somehow synergize or build into demons. Don't just show me a Hearthstone card that would be a good fit in Battlegrounds. Make me something new. And be sure to include its tier, not a mana cost. If you want to include golden versions, that's fine. I'll assume it's a simple doubling. If it doesn't double and it does something unique as a golden, include that and I'll include it. But otherwise, if it's just a doubling, don't worry about it. I'll just ignore it as well because we just assume they double by default. That said, there is a link in the description below to submit those. In the meantime, share your thoughts on all these designs in the comments below. But until then, thanks so very much for watching. And until next time, game on.
Dragons take flight above the ice.